Do you know what really sucks? Is sitting down to edit your project and realizing that you have gaps in your coverage or shots missing. You need to have a really good, specific, and detailed shot list. Head over to filmmakerssecrets.com/shot list, SHOTLIST, to get a killer shot list template along with some training where I show you step by step exactly how to use it.
To make sure that you assemble a really great team of people, to assemble a team of people who create a safe enough space that I don't know is an acceptable answer to a question. If I had to tell this story without words, what would that look like? If I had to write this scene without actors, what does that look like? And kind of within those challenges and those limitations, I think you're able to parse out the real heart of the story.
Filmmakers have the power to evoke emotion, inspire thought, and drive universal change in this world. Right now, a real seismic shift is happening in the film industry. This is your best chance to join a new filmmaking movement. You have been called to create an everlasting impact with your unmatched, deep desire to tell authentic stories. So how does a filmmaker thrive in an environment that is almost intentionally designed to bring you down? That is the question, and this podcast reveals the answer. What's happening, filmmakers? It's George VK. Welcome to Filmmaker Secrets podcast, episode number 55. I would like to introduce my three guests this week who are part of a crew and cast of a new short film called Dear Simone. We have the director, Kevin Deming, writer, producer, lead actor, Jenny Piersol. Am I saying that correct?
Yes, you are.
Perfect. And cinematographer and producer, Andy Whitlatch. So, Kevin, let's start with you. Go ahead and say what's up to our filmmakers and reveal the one filmmaker secret that you have been keeping from us.
What's up, everybody? Excited to be here. I think this is my first podcast. So very appreciative to George for having us on. I think the one big secret that I've maybe gained from recent filmmaking endeavors is there's actually a great shirt that I've been meaning to buy that says "Fix It in Pre." And I'm somebody who does a lot of post editing. I do a lot of editing work. Sorry, I'm gonna talk.
Sorry, yeah.
It's working from home. This is what it's like. I'm very much familiar with that.
His intro to podcasting is now ruined by my Jackson.
We keep rolling with the punches. So fix it in pre. I appreciate that so much. I think that's a great sentiment because that's something that I like to preach a lot is just, there's no reason to leave things for the last sort of, last resort. It's all about fixing it in camera, right? In pre-production, like get it to a spot where it's going to be in a good spot before you actually get it to post-production. That's any more to say on that, Kevin?
Yeah. And I think the thing that I kind of gained recently from a good filmmaking buddy of mine named, Bradley Hasse, he taught me this trick of, he's like, everyone's got an iPhone. He's like, you got a camera, you can record video. He's like, when you're figuring out your film, just bust that out, film the whole thing. Don't make it like, don't worry about the shots. Don't worry about the lighting. Don't worry about the sound. Just like film the story like you're talking about. Get all that kind of fleshed out. And that really helps you kind of see things before you're like getting into it. And so you kind of do this like pre-cut of the film before you actually shoot the film. And that's been extremely helpful. And I don't know if Andy May could speak to this, but he also has an app that we use.
Artemis Pro?
Artemis Pro.
Yeah.
And we'll also kind of pre-shoot all of our shots framing wise with that app. Because it really just allows you to flesh everything out. So that way you're not getting into the edit and being like, oh, this isn't working, or we should have gotten this coverage. It's like, nope, you kind of knew going in. And there's still always going to be issues that arise, but kind of allows you to feel a lot more prepared.
That's great. Jenny, what about you? What's your filmmaker secret?
I have two, I guess, one from the perspective of a filmmaker and one from the perspective of a writer. And the first one is something that Andy actually said to me a year ago, which was just to make sure that you assemble a really great team of people, that's like key. And to assemble a team of people who create a safe enough space that I don't know is an acceptable answer to a question. I feel like you said that a year ago, Andy, and I was like, where do I sign? So I think that that's key. I think we've done that with this film, and I'm really excited about that. I think from a writer's perspective, my biggest secret is just, what's the mantra? I think it's something like, within limitation lies freedom. And so I think it's one thing to vomit up the first draft onto a page, but in the revising process, as you're going through, I find it's helpful to ask myself questions like, if I had to tell this story without words, what would that look like? If I had to write this scene without actors, what does that look like? And kind of within those challenges and those limitations, I think you're able to parse out the real heart of the story.
I'm a big fan of dialogue-less films where you're just relying on body language and facial expressions to communicate your message. So I think that's a great point. And what about you, Andy?
Well, yeah, I second that. You guys talking about showing it, not saying it. As a cinematographer, that's kind of the battle. I feel like I'm not battle, but it's something I'm always trying to fight for, is to kind of visually craft a story versus, like a play or work of theater. These guys did a great job already at taking all the best answers. I will say though that, like, I don't know if this is a secret, but like, I think as I've progressed in this business, and particularly in the camera department, it's like very technical, and I'll meet up for drinks with cinematographers and we'll talk about lenses for a couple hours, and my wife has kind of learned not to join me on those meetups. But truthfully, like, I think finding a life outside of filmmaking and finding a life like outside of industry and industry people, and really spending time on your hobby, spending time on living, spending time with your family, all of that stuff informs the work that you're making. And if you're continually just working inside of this vacuum of like other filmmakers, you're going to make work about filmmaking, which, a lot of people don't want to see. So spend time in your life, work and filmmaking is great, but it's good to have that balance.
For not having or considering it not to be a secret, Andy, I got chills after you said that, because it's so true. I mean, we like to talk about the filmmaking toys, the stories, the new movies coming out, what we're working on, when we kind of forget to really value the things that are truly important to us, right? So that's amazing. I want to get to talking about Dear Simone and the fundraising campaign that you have going on. Before I do, though, I always like to find out that initial spark that my guests have of wanting to become a filmmaker. So, Jenny, how about we start with you? What was that initial launching point where you knew you were going to be a filmmaker, a writer, an actor? Tell us that story.
Yeah, well, I mean, acting came first for sure. And I think that actually was born out of studying abroad. And there weren't any performance opportunities for me. And my mom came to visit me. And at one point I said, I'm loving it over here in London, but I feel like a caged bird. And she said, and I will never forget, you have the rest of your life to be practical, live a little. Like what you get, and so I kind of came to New York, decided I was going to give New York my 20s. Those have come and gone, and we're still here. So that was it as an actor. But as far as being a filmmaker, I mean, that's a pretty recent. I didn't write my first film until May of 2020, and candidly, I put write my first film in quotes, because what I did was start filming things that I thought were interesting, and then I came up with a plot as I went along. And that was this little short film called Quarantine, and it was just the story of, what it looked like at the time for couples to be completely and wholeheartedly on top of each other, and just the dynamics that were being created at the time. So, I would say the pandemic was really what spurned my interest in filmmaking. I was also taking a lot of film studies classes and film writing classes with the Jen Waldman studio with a teacher called Mark Shanahan, who's fabulous. And I was just really falling in love with the medium. I mean, it's just such a multi-faceted, multi-layered medium in a way that just writing isn't. Like there's something about filmmaking that just all the Easter eggs and the details. And, I think what I really fell in love with was the idea of writing or creating films that would be interesting to second and third time viewers of the film. In the same way, like Get Out, for example, I feel like you could watch that thing 17 times and still see new details that are just the product of somebody having done a lot of work and prepared thinking and just creativity. And so, I think when I think about like, who's my ideal audience, it's somebody who wants to see the thing like 3 or 4 times. And I want to make sure that there are new things for them to see.
We're going to have a fun question towards the very end that kind of touches on that. So I'm excited to ask you. Andy, I'm going to come to you. What was your spark that launched your passion and your love for cinematography?
I'd say, I feel like this is a lot of cinematographers' answer, but I really fell in love working in the darkroom and developing 35 millimeter film in high school. Actually, we had a dark room, and we go out and shoot these projects and come back into the dark room and develop the film. And sometimes you'd find that your entire roll was black or white, and you'd learn that lesson of exposure. This is how you need light to make images. And so seeing images that you actually crafted successfully, and seeing those come alive under the red light, as it develops and does its thing. I'd say like that was kind of the first moment for me that was like really, really exciting.
Beautiful. And Kevin, you and I went to film school together. What was your initial spark? Because we hadn't really had a chance to talk about that.
Yeah. Mine, I think, goes way back to when I was a kid. My dad always had a camcorder. I think we were one of the few people on our block back before everyone had camera phones, where it was like my dad had the big shoulder rig, and I would always play around with it. And we had some family friends come to visit when I was, let's say, like 11 or 12. And we just decided to shoot like a little horror film. So we had a gorilla mask and we were running around the neighborhood and filming all this stuff. And I don't know about you guys, but all of my films back then devolved into fight scenes when I was younger. It was like, what's fun to do? A fight scene. So of course there's a fight scene with the monster gorilla guy. And I plugged my dad's camcorder into our home VCR unit, and I realized that I could edit and I could make cuts and record from one device to the other. So that was my first time editing and kind of learning how to cut a story together. And that was when it really clicked. And I specifically remember there was this one trick shot we were trying to do where we were trying to throw the guy off of a ledge. And so I had to cut from the real person to a dummy. And the first time I did that successfully in camera, it was like, oh my gosh, movie magic. And so I think I've been hooked ever since. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. All right. So dear Simone, what was the inspiration? I just from reading the Indiegogo campaign page, it's clear that it's kind of a female-led crew, and written obviously by a woman, a female filmmaker, which is fantastic because I'm always a proponent of we need more women in the film industry. What was that inspiration? What's the why, the reason for you wanting to tell this story? Any one of you can take that, but Jenny.
I was going to say, who? Feel bad.
That's all you.
All right. Yeah. So the initial spark of inspiration was correspondence between myself and my own former therapist. And, but that, to be honest, I feel like that's where the seed was planted, but I think it grew very quickly into that relationship being a conduit for another relationship. I knew I didn't want to write like a rom-com, that wasn't like appealing to me at the time. And so I wanted to write something that would be, I don't know, that would just kind of dive into what a sibling relationship looks like. And that no matter how tense that can be, that there's, I think I say this on a campaign page, but like sometimes the people you most want to kill are the ones that you would also take a bullet for. And to me, that I feel like that like really captures siblings at times. And so I think I really wanted to explore that. I'm also fascinated by what it looks like to honor our own personal wounds on the way to healing them. I feel like that shows up a lot in the roles that I play. And also, those are just I'm interested in in the cracks, like I don't really have any interest in the facade. I want to know, like, well, when we crack it open, what does this thing look like? And I feel like, I don't know, guys, chime in here. That's not representing
the flaws of humanity, right? I mean, that's what makes the characters relatable. And I think I love the little piece that is in there. This is a love story. It's just a platonic one.
Right. Well, right. And that feels, universally relatable to me. Even if you don't have siblings, I think you have cousins, or you have somebody who, God, these people who just know how to push your buttons, but there is just such a deep, a deep love for this person. And I just think that to me is interesting.
Yeah. Fantastic. So at the time of this recording, we are about 40% funded on Indiegogo. So I urge all the filmmakers listening to check out the link in the show notes. Give some love to dear Simone and the fantastically talented filmmakers that are embarking on this crazy adventure, because the more you give, the more you will receive. So at the very least, share the page, spread it around. There are, as of March 3rd, 16 days left in the Indiegogo campaign. And, you are asking for $25K, which, relatively speaking, could sound like a lot of money, but truly in the world of short films really isn't a lot of money. And I love that you have detailed, what the budget is exactly going to, percentage wise, how much, you're making it a priority to go to the cast and crew to make sure that you're paying your people fairly, and, so that people can continue to survive, because we're filmmakers, and that initial idea of asking for money it's something that I found really difficult in the past. I don't know how you know.
Oh God, it's the worst.
Yeah, right. Is there
so
anything that you can speak to that in terms of the perks that you're offering, the sort of notoriety, the status? What is it about backing your project that truly kind of transcends that initial exchange of, yes, I'm giving you money, but in exchange, I'm getting this value. I'm going to be part of this project. I feel like I'm actually included and part of a community.
I think the most bolstering thing about asking for money is that some of the offers, the financial resources that were offered to us were offered before we even started the campaign. And that was because we were talking about the story and people were feeling like, oh God, like I want to be a part of that. That sounds intriguing, or that sounds exciting. And so I feel like I was on a couple calls where, I was talking to people and they were, on speakerphone with their spouses and they were like, all right, Jenny, like pitch us, and as you start telling a story, I mean, I think you're totally right. Like story is paramount. And so when you can kind of hook people in that way and they get to feel like they're a part of it because they're an associate producer, or they're coming to our very first private screening, or they're, an executive producer, whatever it is, that they feel like, well, they got to have a hand in making this thing come to life, especially people who are not in the entertainment industry at all. Sometimes, one of the only ways that they can be a part of the thing is giving of their financial resources or of their time. And so, I think there's definitely more magic happening than just an exchange of resources.
For sure.
Yeah, I think if I can jump in, we've talked a lot about filmmaking being a collaborative process, and it's like you're bringing all these people together to create something. And I think this fundraising campaign in particular, besides all the ones I've kind of loosely been a part of, it's like I kind of had this realization that's like, oh, you're kind of having this. Filmmaking has this ability to involve people who aren't even necessarily the filmmakers. It's like, because you do need the resources and the encouragement and the family that's going to support you to do this crazy endeavor. And so it's cool to feel like, oh, like you're kind of involving someone in the art form, unlike other forms of art where it's like, okay, there's this picture, this painting, and I can admire it and I can appreciate it, but I wasn't really part of it happening. That's kind of cool to be like, oh, we can involve people in this process. And so, yeah, I think that's been a informative part of this endeavor.
Let me tell you, the first time that I saw my name up on the big screen, that I got the hippie-jeebies. I mean, it's a great feeling to feel like you're part of this thing. And especially, my backstory is I'm an immigrant, born and raised in Kazakhstan. So the idea of even going to film school to learn how to make movies, I had no clue that was somebody's job, that there are people, hundreds of people on, Hollywood sets that are making the thing. And it's just not something I ever thought of. And then to have that experience, it truly puts you in this sort of space of awe. And I think a big piece of that awe really rests on the shoulders of the cinematographer. So I'm curious to know, where you guys are at in the process, of, is the script finished? Where's the pre-production? How are you sort of planning the visual motifs, the elements? Kind of give me a high level overview of how you are planning the story and how those elements are going to serve that story.
Well, I like the credit, the cinematography credit. Well, I will say, so Jenny's script, it reads very visual. And I think that's one thing I certainly look for when I'm reading a script, is that it's like, there's definitely a component of it that feels like very visual storytelling. I think, so I'm grateful to work inside that container initially. And then Kevin, as a director, is also an editor and really understands how stuff cuts together. And he's also a very visual storyteller as well. So I think for me, it's what, referring back to what Jenny was saying earlier, is like having the right creative team in place to sort of make that happen. Now, as you know, it's like based on funding and location, it's like a lot of that informs what we can do visually, how many days we have to shoot. And so I think for us, it's like we kind of have a broad strokes idea of what we want it to look like. But for right now, we're kind of waiting to see what the fundraising comes in at the end.
Well, hopefully you hit 100%, right? Go ahead, Kevin.
Oh yeah. Kind of seeing where we land. And Jenny and I had some earlier conversations about the look and the feel. And I think there's going to be interesting marriage of her style and aesthetic and the characters that she's written, also with my visual storytelling style. And we've had a lot of conversations around tone, and especially this being kind of like a good balance of the drama, but also some comedy. And so finding where those things kind of meet and intersect. And so I'm looking forward to getting more involved. And we have some talented actors on board, and we're going to probably be starting rehearsals pretty soon, fleshing out those characters. So we're still in the early days of pre-production, and like Andy said, waiting to see where we land with the finances and the locations. But really excited to start kind of ramping those things up soon.
Now, speaking of actors, you secured Miles G. Jackson and Clarissa Thibault. Can you talk about how that went down? I think the approach of casting is always kind of the chicken and egg, right? You want to secure funding, but in order to secure funding, you kind of need to have some name talent, quote unquote, whatever that means, backing you so that there's incentive for the funds to come through. But then there's also, it's a back and forth. So tell me how that came about.
Yeah. So I feel very lucky in that, both of these people are coming with significant credits, which is great, but it's also, they're both just amazing, empathetic, kind human beings. Miles came on, as I was writing it, he was somebody that I had in mind. We've known each other for years, and I've always wanted to act on camera with him. And he sort of fits the bill of the brother character that I was going for anyway. So he's kind of been with this thing from its very first reading. And Clarissa is, I think because Simone is a real life person to me, it was very important to find somebody who I felt could capture that dichotomy of a deep well of empathy with flashes of mischief and life-loving joy. And, I just think that her natural essence, what she brings to that character, I think she and the real life person were different, but I think that there's just something so authentic and natural and joyous, but also like there's some deep roots there, And so I think that I feel very lucky in that I feel the people that we've brought to the table are perfectly cast, and of course they're coming with some pretty great credits, and that to me seems like a bonus in terms of the producing side of things. I'm mostly just excited that I think they really capture the characters very well.
Perfect. I always like to kind of know those inner working relationships. I think it just goes to show that the power of relationships within the film industry cannot be talked about enough. And I think we like to focus on the art, perhaps a little bit of the business, but mostly on the art, that the part of relationships tends to drop out and we forget the importance of nurturing and building those relationships up. We're going to start working towards wrapping up. Unfortunately, I could be talking to you for hours because I want to know more, but I think what we'll do is get you back on when your Indiegogo campaign inevitably starts to really pick up steam and finishes off over 100%. I'll be pushing for it. Before we wrap up and the final question gets asked, I would like to know, where can our filmmakers go to find out more about you and Dear Simone, the progress, and give sort of any kind of follow links that you have going on Instagram, Facebook?
Yeah. So we've got an Instagram handle at dearsimone.film. That's probably the best place to go. I think for now, that's probably the best place to go.
Perfect. And what production company is kind of overseeing this?
So we're kind of partnering with, I have a production company that I was kind of started in the last couple of years with a couple of buddies named Working Artist Films. And so, we've have our first short that I also directed and Andy shot a little over a year and a half ago. It's in the film festival submission rounds right now. So hopefully it'll get into some film festivals this year and then we can get it out to the public. So Working Artist Films, which is at workingartistfilms.com. We actually still need an Instagram page. We're bad on social media. We've been talking
have you grabbed the handle?
I've been meaning to. We keep talking about it, and I'm like hoping it exists. So I'll probably jump on after this and see.
You should before the episode comes out.
I was going to take it.
That's amazing. So, filmmakers, please go ahead and check out all those links down in the show notes. Last question for all three of you. I want to thank you so much for being on the Filmmaker Secrets podcast. This one is a doozy. What is your deserted island movie? So, if you could only watch one film for the rest of your life, what would it be? Jenny, you look excited. I'll go to you first.
I'm so excited. It is A Monster Calls. Do you know this film?
I have not. I'll check it out.
Oh, God, it's beautiful. It is probably the most accurate portrayal of a child's grief I've ever seen in my life. It's gorgeous.
Okay, awesome. Kevin?
A Monster Calls? That's what it's called?
Monster Calls.
Huh. Oh boy, I'm always the worst. Everyone's like, "You're a filmmaker. What's your favorite film?" I'm like, "Let me give you some top tens." Shoot, I'm like, I feel like it's got to be because I'm always like watching like moody like things that make me think too much, and then I'm like, "But I don't want to watch that when you're on repeat on a desert island by myself." So I need something that like is more feel good, maybe.
Mrs. Doubtfire, how about that?
I know I'm honestly like about to say like, oh, it's got to be something like Young Frankenstein or A Princess Bride.
Oh, let's see Princess Bride.
I feel like there's hope. Good, yeah. Or if there's no
Does
hope,
anybody want a peanut? Andy, over to you.
Oh, Kevin didn't answer. Oh my gosh, this is tough.
Actually, I'm going to go back. I'm going to say Life Aquatic because I have a Life Aquatic tattoo and I watch that movie pretty much every single year. So that's my answer.
There you go.
I'm going to say Good Will Hunting.
Oh.
Nice. I had the VHS of that back in the day.
Yeah, because the plane probably crashed. It wasn't my fault. Like, just a reminder of that. It'd be good just for survival.
Amazing. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate all of you, and best of luck with the Indiegogo campaign. Much success to you. Thank you so much for being on the Filmmaker Secrets podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Joey.
If you like that, then you are going to love my Cine Racing Challenge. This is a 7-day filmmaking competition where your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to write, shoot, and edit a short 60-second film in just 7 days for your one chance to win with over $10,000 in prizes. So head over to cineracing.com. That's cineracing.com to get registered. Spots are filling up fast and the timer is ticking before the next Cine Racing Challenge launches. So be sure to head over to cineracing.com right now to get registered. I'll see you over there.